Hello YouTubers. Well, I'm moving on from my stories about my uh, early days as a youth for about, I don't know, a year or 18 months, because although the war had started and I moved up to my new school, nothing really seemed to be happening. Um, well, of course, there were an awful lot of things happening. Germany was overrunning Europe. Britain was tooling up with aircraft and guns and ammunition ready for the fighting them back. And on the home front, organisations had arranged for everybody to have gas masks, put in programs of food, petrol, and all sorts of rationing. And one of the things that they did was to issue everybody with a shelter. If you had a garden, this was called an Anderson shelter. And although I have many pictures, if I was able to import them or drag them into this video, I would, but I can't. So just to describe the Anderson shelter, it was supplied in sections of very, very heavy galvanized steel, which you bolted together in a sort of box formation with a curved roof, and then covered it over with earth. And so there were in fact lots going on, but as far as the general public were concerned, nothing seemed to be happening, and we all got on with our lives as usual. The air raid siren did go, I think, probably 2 or 3 days after the beginning of the war, and of course we naturally went down to our air raid shelters. I don't know about in fear, but wondering what was going to happen. And it turned out to be a false alarm, and this happened a number of times. And so basically, I suppose we got used to ignoring the air raid sirens until, of course, the inevitable happened. Germany started to indiscriminately bomb many of our cities, not for military targets, but just to bomb them, I suppose, to try and demoralise us. And living in Norwich in Norfolk, it wasn't a very, very big city, and one never thought that it was going to happen to us, but of course it did. And it was one night, and there was an horrendous noise of bombs falling, and an enemy bomber had fortunately crossed our lane, dropping a series of bombs as it went. If it had gone down the lane, there would have been very much more chaos and casualties. It did hit one house, and of course with the nasty consequences that you would imagine happened. But we were quite lucky in that one of the bombs in the sequence did land at the end of our garden. At the end of our garden there was a park called Waterloo Park, and that bomb didn't go off and was subsequently defused and then taken away. If it had have gone off, I may, if we were in our shelter, I dare say we would have survived, but certainly if we were in the house, we would not. So that was a very lucky escape. Anyway, those raids went on for a long time, intermittently, and of course one still had to go to school and people had to go to work. And the time came when my parents realised that I was just so exhausted and tired that I wasn't coping, and decided to send me to a place of safety, which was to an aunt and uncle who lived in March, a town, I don't know, maybe about 40 miles away, where a very much smaller town where it wasn't expected that the Germans would bother with. And so I was sent off to stay with my uncle and aunt. I wrote a story about this many years ago, way before sort of my YouTube time, and if I think I could finish the story by reading you that cut down and edited version, that would be a nice end to my video. So This is the edited version of that story. Just let me have a drink of water. Nice. The station was almost deserted. Very different from the time when Mum would take my brother and me on a trip to the seaside for the day. Now it had an air of gloom, very much in keeping with the mood of the country. Only the newsstand remained. A placard announced more raids, heroism of firefighters, heavy casualties. Dad bought my ticket and gave it to me. It's a return ticket, so keep it safe. And we walked through to the station where our train was standing at the platform, steam hissing from its boiler onto the track. As we walked through, the pigeons flew up from where they were pecking on the floor to the heavy roof girders where they roosted, the flapping of their wings sounding like the sound of a machine gun. We got into the first carriage, and although we were the only ones there, Dad put my suitcase onto the rack above the seats. "Have you got the letter for Aunt Mary?" "Yes," I replied, "I have it safe in my pocket." "You will be off soon, so I must get out." And then he took me in his arms and hugged me, something that he had never done before. I could feel the pocket watch that hung from a chain on his waistcoat press onto my chest, and could smell the mixture of meat and tobacco from his clothes. I unhooked the strong leather strap from its fastener and let down the window. I watched as my dad walked through the station until a bend in the track hid him from view. The pigeons flew up again. Although I had the address written down, I remembered my way to Deerfield Road, where my aunt and uncle lived. Aunt Mary answered my knock at the door with a naturally puzzled expression. It was now late morning, and at this point I broke down and cried, probably from sheer exhaustion, or maybe because I felt that I had found sanctuary. She picked up my suitcase, took me in, and sat me down. I handed her the letter. Here, I'm afraid my memory fails me a bit. I remember waking up being disorientated until I got my bearings and remembered where I was. It was bright daylight. I must have slept for more than 24 hours. I stayed with them for more than a week before returning home to return to school. But that's